When dealing with players, as long as you can do what you're supposed to do and you do it well, that's all that matters. And I think especially with younger and younger generations, they're used to seeing females in more like leadership roles and maybe more like not typical female roles. So they're a little more open to it, but they just want to know that you can do what your responsibilities are and you can help them.
Welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast, a podcast about women who work in sports. I'm your host, Jahaan Blake. After 15 years of working for 3 major league teams, including the Boston Red Sox, Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Chicago Cubs, I discovered the one thing I loved the most was helping women in sports shatter glass ceilings and take their seat at the table. I loved it so much that I made a business out of it. I have the honor of coaching high-performing women in the sports and entertainment industry and supporting them as they go after exactly what they want in their career. So if you are feeling tired of waiting on the sidelines, done being overlooked for promotions, and you're ready to pull ahead of the pack and take your career to the next level, girl, I'm here for it. I also created the Game of Her Own podcast to support you as well. We are here to share the stories of incredible women who work in sports and entertainment. These leaders and trailblazers will inspire you with their success and the lessons they've learned along the way to the top. Ladies, there is nothing like women empowering women. I am so honored you're here. Today's guest is someone special. Yes, I know all of my guests are special, but today's guest was my intern when we both worked for the Red Sox. She clearly has gone on to do great things, and it's exactly why I asked her to be a guest on the podcast. Jen Wolf is the life skills coordinator for the Cleveland Indians. I'm not sure about you, but after 2020, I could certainly use a life skills coordinator in my life. But Jen doesn't work with just anyone. She works directly with the players. She has a direct impact on them assimilating into playing pro sports, and you can bet that carries over to them playing on the field. Listen in as Jen takes you on her incredible journey, including the difficult decision she made to leave sports, the support she knew she was missing, and how Jen went out and created it herself, and why she encourages all of us to bet on ourselves. Hey, don't forget, the month of January, all the episodes are dedicated to women who work directly with the players. If you missed any of the previous 2 episodes, don't worry, I linked to those in the show notes so you can listen to those after. All right, friends, let's do this. All right, I cannot believe it. It is finally here. Who would have thought when we first met, 18 years ago, that we'd be here now? But Jen, welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast. I am so excited you're here.
Thanks, Jahaan, and thank you so much for having me.
We're going to have so much fun talking about what you do, and I know people are going to be very interested. But before we get there, take us back in time and tell us when you first fell in love with sports.
So I grew up, playing sports and watching sports. My mom is the sports fanatic and my dad is more of the jock. So got a little bit of both of them and, played everything growing up, played softball, ice hockey, soccer, and then really just, I think it's hard not to fall in love with baseball growing up outside of Boston. And then also my my dad plays in a men's rec league that he's played in for 20 years. So I grew up going to his games, which is funny because a lot of people in baseball grow up watching their dads play. Mine was just, on high school backfields and not in major league or minor league ballparks. But
doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's where, exactly. And that's where my love for the game, I would sit on the bench and score the games for him in middle school and things like that. So that's really kind of where my love for baseball came from.
God, you were scoring games in middle school?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I didn't learn until I was in I didn't learn until I was in my 30s.
No, someone had to do it. So my dad was like, here's the book. Go for it.
Wow. All right. Very good. You probably teach me a few things because I am not that good at it. What sports did you play?
My 2 best sports were ice hockey and softball. But I feel like I did a little bit of everything. Soccer, basketball, I ran cross country, not very fast.
Ice hockey, huh?
Yeah. So I growing up in New England, you learn how to skate, and I was in figure skating lessons, and I am not very graceful, but I could skate very well. So my mom was like, let's not waste this skill, and pulled me out of figure skating and put me in ice hockey.
That was amazing timing. I was taking a sip of my coffee, and nobody could see me, but I almost spit it everywhere. Okay, that's awesome. Did you play with all women or all men or a combination when you were playing?
No, by the time I played, starting in middle school, and it was all women, the league that I was in. I think if I had started younger, it may have been mixed, but
okay.
Yeah, mine was girls.
Okay, so you grew up in a sports family, knew how to score a baseball game in middle school, which is crazy to me. I was behind the game apparently. So tell me, like, when did you think, okay, I love sports, I need to work in sports?
So in high school, I was in high school in 2003, 2004. So, watching the Red Sox at that point was phenomenal and kind of, winning the World Series for the first time in 86 years and being able to witness that. And around that time, I read Moneyball, and a lot of my peers in the game will also say that Moneyball is what got them into the game. I am not an analytics type, so it didn't draw me to the game in that sense, but it just made me realize that people do this as a living and you can work for professional teams. And so that was kind of where I got the idea of like, oh wait, this is something I can do long term.
Okay. And then talk about your first job in sports.
So I interned in the fan services department with the lovely Jahaan Blake.
With the Boston Red Sox.
Exactly. But what happened was I had a weekend job in high school at Brugger's Bagels in Weston Center. And Lou Gorman, the former GM, used to come in. He was one of our regular customers. And my dad had been like, you should just talk to him, ask him, are there any opportunities to work or anything? And so one day, I think it was like in February or something, I just said, hey, Mr. Gorman, my name is Jen. I'm graduating high school soon and would love to work in baseball. And he gave me a business card and he wrote a phone number on the back. And it turned out to be Sarah McKenna's phone number, who I know has been on this podcast in the past. And so I called her and, told her that I was interested in working in baseball. And I remember you guys brought me in. And I forget exactly what it was called, but you guys brought me in for like an informational interview and there was like a fan squad or something, like
the ambassadors
help with like, well, no, not even that. It was like, I could help with like flag drops when you needed extra people.
Oh, yes.
Like team.
Fenway Force.
Yeah. And you were like, this is the only thing that we have available. And then I remember, a month or so later getting another call back that was like, hey, can you actually come in for an interview? And so I did. And still not really sure why you hired me because my prior work experience was at a bagel shop, but it all worked out.
You got to start somewhere. So, okay, what was it like getting that card from Lou and then actually making that phone call to Sarah? Like, were you super nervous? Like, talk us through that.
I don't want to admit how long ago it was, but I guess we kind of already have done that. So I can't.
Been there.
Right. I can't really remember exactly what I felt, but I think for me, networking has always kind of come naturally, and I've always been a people person, and I've always liked meeting new people and talking to new people. So I just needed the little bit of a push, like, hey, this is something that people do. Like, you're not bugging him if you ask him these questions. Mm-hmm. And kind of the same thing with calling Sarah. It was like, hey, if this is what you want, this is what you have to do. And I think this was obviously email existed. The iPhone definitely didn't exist yet. I think we were still on Blackberries. But so like email it was there. Obviously we were using email, but it wasn't the go-to kind of way to communicate with people. I think nowadays I'd reach out to people over email first, but I also don't remember what my high school email address was, but it was probably something really embarrassing. So it's probably better that I called.
All right. So you called Sarah, you joined Fenway Force, so the volunteer group. And for everybody who hasn't listened to Sarah's episode yet, Sarah, or maybe you don't remember, Sarah was my first boss in baseball. So she is still with the Boston Red Sox and she's now an SVP of fan services and entertainment. And so you called Sarah and then you became a volunteer working for me on the Fenway Force, which I still hear from people who used to volunteer with that group, which is fantastic. And then you got another call saying, come back for an interview. And what was that interview for?
For an internship opportunity in fan services. And I never even did anything with Fenway Force. It was just like, hey, we'll put your name on the list. And then I got another call back. Okay.
And so your first job in sports was working for me. And what did you do for the internship? How much did you make? Give everybody a little sneak peek as how you.
I don't think it's legal to discuss how much I made because I don't think I was paid.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I distinctly remember this. So I was a ball girl for a handful of games and I was paid those days. That's what I remember.
Yes, right. There's always a way to get you guys paid, but some more volunteering. So you worked an unpaid internship.
Yes. And will say very fortunate to be able to do that, because I know that's not an opportunity that everyone can do. I wasn't even in college yet. It was kind of the summer before college. So I just kind of was like, okay, get some job experience. Like I didn't think about anything about compensation or whatnot. But yeah, so you guys put me to work. We were answering a lot of fan mail. I just remember those like post office baskets full of fan mail from November 2004 that we were still going through. A lot of like answering phone calls from a customer service perspective, and then taking guests to batting practice. So, whether it was there was some like pregame VIP tours or doing stuff with the honorary bat boy and bat girl or the blood donor of the game or whatever it was, but making sure the like pregame ceremonies went off without a hitch.
I mean, that's a great internship for somebody who just graduated high school and is about to start college.
Oh, for sure. I remember my first day, you guys were like, okay, this is the honorary bat boy and bat girl. Go sit with them in the dugout during batting practice. And I was like, me? Like, you're asking me to do this? This is a job?
Oh my God. The side story, the same thing happened to me. Like our program first started, and so it hadn't existed before. And I had that same role, and they're like, okay, go sit in the dugout. We had the whole process for a bat boy and bat girl. And usually these people people who aren't familiar with bat boy and bat girl, they were either randomly selected or pre-selected through like a sponsor or something. But we brought them down to the dugout. I think the players are walking by, they come over and talk to them. And I'm usually not starstruck, right? And I didn't know all the players by name, and it was not a prerequisite for the job. And so I remember Kevin Millar came over, and me and the two kids I was with couldn't say anything. We were just like, no one can see me. My mouth is just open. I don't know why. I got like super nervous, and I was, it never happened again. But after I was like, okay, you're supposed to help the kids and make them talk. And like the three of us just were like staring at him while he was talking to us.
Yeah, same thing. But I think the first guy that came and talked to us was Chad Bradford, which for me, having read Moneyball, he's like the guy in Moneyball, because they talk about how he pitches. He's like a submariner and his knuckles drag on the mound. And so I'm like, oh my God, I just read this book about you. Like, what are you doing next to me in the dugout?
That's so funny. Yeah, it was interesting when it was early in our career, and it was just like, what is happening? Like, why? How did I get this job? Right?
Exactly.
And you did not get paid, but I got paid like minimum wage. So I was right there with you. Okay. So enough strolling down memory lane. So I love what you do now. And I'm glad that we reconnected, especially when I saw your title and I was like, excuse me, what do you do? I've never heard of this before. So tell everybody what you do now and who you do it for.
Yeah, so I'm the life skills coordinator with the Cleveland Indians, and it's a role that's pretty unique to baseball. I think you see it at the collegiate level in sports and in football a lot. Our farm director, my boss, came over from football, and so I think that's where a lot of the influence comes from. And to be honest, what I do isn't unique in the sense that like it's not something that's not done other places. At other places, players open bank accounts, players get their social security cards. They obviously eat and learn about nutrition somewhat, but it's kind of done like haphazardly, and it's, hey, intern, can you grab the van and take these guys to Walmart? Or, whoever's around, can you help these guys with their paperwork? It's not really done intentionally. And so my job was created to be more meaningful with how we interact with our players and how we develop them off the field. So basic finances, budgeting, banking, housing is really big at the minor league level. We're fortunate to have a lot of host families at the lower levels for our teams. But so helping to coordinate that and setting expectations for our players when they go into host family situations. Some of the cultural adjustments for players coming from Latin America. We have a really amazing education department led by Anna Bolton, supporting her with kind of more the adjusting to the cultural side of it, not just the language. But yeah, it's a little bit of everything. I feel like what's really fun about my job is that I interact with all the different domains in player development. So, even the hitting and pitching coaches and our field coordinators and our mental skills, education, nutrition, all of that, and kind of just help smooth things out with their jobs. And, if there's tension points or there's things that players aren't quite grasping, maybe it's their health insurance, maybe it's being responsible with their debit card, and just helping players develop those skills as well, and not just what they need on the field.
I thought it was such an interesting job when you told me back then. And thanks for sharing it with everybody. So how did you even learn about this role? Because it makes sense. And what I'm hearing you say is those things that the players needed, there was no structure around it.
Exactly.
Right? So all of those sort of life skills that they needed, it wasn't that it was ignored, but it wasn't Nobody, like you said, was intentional about doing it. There was no structure or program in place. And so how long has this job been around?
I'm finishing up my second season. Obviously, this year was a little different than 2019.
Yes, I think we all need a life skills coordinator for 2020.
Yes, sometimes I feel like the coaches need me just as much as the players do.
Yes, I think we all do.
Basically what happened was I've been with the Mets for 7 seasons in player development, but more on the administrative side. So making sure that everything works from an administrative perspective, all the contracts, transactions, expenses, reimbursements, things like that. But I had always just been drawn to helping the players as well. And I'm bilingual. I've spent time in the Dominican Republic, and I just really connected with all of the players and was a resource for there. And I remember the number one question I would get was, I know you're not the person I need to ask this question to, but I know you'll point me in the right direction and you'll get back to me right away. Like, where do I go for help? And I was just kind of that resource for them. So after leaving the Mets, I was looking for a new opportunity and reaching out to all my contacts in baseball. And I think around the same time, Cleveland had this role in mind, but hadn't found the right fit for it yet. We got connected and here I am. Okay.
So I want to know everything that happened between here I am and when you left the Mets, right? Like, so talk to us, like, it's a relatively new role. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct.
It's on the personal development side, right? The player side. You're interacting with players at such a pivotal point in their lives and career. So how do you come in as a female into this male dominated industry? And it's male dominated because you're dealing with players, right? And the players are male. So, but how do you get in there, and how did you handle it? What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, so I think relationship building is the most important thing. And I definitely think this is where being bilingual helps as well. Just being able to communicate and talk to people in their language is really helpful. And obviously we're trying to help our players learn English, but it's also comfortable to have somebody that can speak to you in Spanish if you need it. But I think what I found in my experience, and I don't want to speak for every woman in the game, but I have found when dealing with players, as long as you can do what you're supposed to do and you do it well, that's all that matters. And I think especially with younger and younger generations, they're used to seeing females in more leadership roles and maybe more not typical female roles. So they're a little more open to it, but they just want to know that you can do what your responsibilities are and you can do what you can help them essentially. And so there definitely was, I don't want to say a learning curve per se, but it took some time just to get that buy-in and get that trust. But once that happened, it was really easy. And I think even for players from Latin America that come from kind of a more machismo culture, they still like having that female presence around. And it's nice having somebody that reminds them of their mom or their sister or whoever is, the female figure in their life, and that they can talk to about some things that they might not be able to talk to, their hitting coach about or their manager about, or they might not want to talk to that person about. And that's where myself and some of my other coworkers can kind of be those liaisons. And if somebody's dealing with somebody, kind of be their advocate and point them in the right direction if they're unsure about speaking up to other people or they're worried about playing time or whatever it may be. But yeah, I think the biggest thing as a woman is just, if you do what you're supposed to do, you do your job, that's all they need. That's the only proof they need that you belong there. And then they'll accept you and rely on you. I guess what I really hear you saying is the players appreciate that female presence. Right. And it's all about the buy-in and the trust that you bring to the table. So to me, I hear you saying I'm a woman and I just own it. And here I am. I'm not trying to change to adapt to them. I do my job. I do it well. And by doing so, I get trust from them, which is the number one most important thing. Exactly. And I think early in my career, I felt like I had to be one of the guys and try to fit in. And I've realized that I can still be me and be in this role. And so I have my nails painted crazy colors and, I don't know, but I can still express my individuality and still be me and be in this role. And I'm not in the office, but I can wear dresses and that's okay. When I was in the office, I can not be afraid to be myself. And even if that is somewhat feminine. And I think a lot of us get in the game and we feel like we have to fit in with whatever we think is what the guys are doing. And that's not true. I mean, maybe it's age and maturity and where I'm at in my career, but I just feel like I'm at a point now where I can do my job. I have a proven track record in what I can do, and I can do it while being me. And that's what's most important.
Yeah, that's huge, right? So that feeling, and I love that you shared this with us and, opened up and said, I felt like in the beginning I had to be one of the guys. And that's actually not the case. Like, what was that turning point for you when you were like, I stop pretending to be something I'm not?
So I think some of it was, I'm a fan of raunchy humor and dirty jokes and I swear and, but there's a line and there are certain, discussions that I still don't think are professional to have in a work setting and things like that. And I was just noticing that some of the guys that I was around like thought that was okay. And I was like, you know what, that's not me. This is not how I want to communicate at work. And I'm just going to, separate myself from it. And again, I think some of it comes with just maturity and age as well, and getting to a point where you're more confident in yourself. But I just, got to a point where I was like, I know what I bring to the table and I don't need to prove it to these other people by sitting and telling dirty jokes at lunch or whatever it may be.
Right. Wow. I love that. That's hard, right? Because when in theory it makes sense, right? And you can someone might be listening and being like, yeah, you're right. But then I'm not gonna sit and listen to dirty jokes when I get a job and I work with players and I'm gonna stand up for myself. But then you get in it and you're like, oh shoot. Like when you're in that moment, it's hard. It's so hard.
It is hard.
I want to speak up, but I don't want them to, not like me. And I want them to think I'm okay. And I'm one of the guys. And I think it's really something that takes courage to do.
For sure. And I think, I probably could have handled it a little differently than I did too. I just took myself out of the situation, which is good. But I think I could have been more proactive and spoken up too, and just been like, hey guys, this is not cool. And I wish I had done that a little earlier, more for the people that are coming after me. And if there's other women that are around or other people that are uncomfortable, because not everyone may feel comfortable taking themselves out of the situation like I did.
Yeah. And I think what's great about it is being able to have these conversations now and look back. When I look back, I'm like, okay, there is not I am always speaking up now. Right. And I don't care if I make people uncomfortable, whatever the topic may be, whatever the reason, I'm going to speak up. When I was early in my career, I didn't. So I was like, put my head down and I'm going to get my work done. And
exactly.
I'm not going to be the person who speaks up and then I get flagged and I just don't, you know what I mean? Leadership doesn't think I'm a problem. Now, I don't work for a team anymore, but now it's just I can't do that, and later in my career when I was working for teams, I was like, no, got to use my voice, got to speak up, and I'm going to make everybody uncomfortable and I don't care.
And I think people are a little more open to uncomfortable conversations now, which is good. Yes. But I think you're right. And I think especially when you're the only woman or one of a couple women and you're younger, you just feel like all eyes are on you. And if you speak up, it's you that's the problem and not them. And that's the hard part. That's where it gets hard to speak out, but maybe removing yourself from the situation is a little more comfortable.
Hey, Jahaan here. I hope you're enjoying the interview. I'm sure you are thinking about your own career right now and how you can pull out in front of the pack to take your career to the next level. For 18 years, supporting women in sports has been my favorite part of my career, and I would love to support you. Whether it's joining my free Game of Her Own community or one of my one-on-one coaching programs, I am here for you. Send me a message at jblake@jahaanblake.com or DM me on Instagram @jahaanblake, and let's schedule a time to have a free session. I cannot wait to hear from you. All right, let's get back to why you're here. In your unique role, how are you showing the value you bring to the table, and how are you advocating for yourself? And do you know what I mean? How do you show the value of this great work that you're doing?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, because I think that sports in general, but baseball especially, have gotten so data driven, and it's kind of hard to tell what I do and to track it. It's a soft skill. And I think that not every organization values that. And that's part of why I moved on. I knew that what my strengths were, and I knew they were undervalued. The biggest thing for me that tells me that I have value is when, something goes on with a player and I'm the first person they reach out to. Whether it's, hey, I need some of my tax paperwork, or I need, whatever it may be, that I'm the go-to person that they reach out to. I think that shows, to me at least, that validates, hey, I've built their trust, especially going from one organization to another, that I've really ingrained myself in this culture and I'm part of the team. As far as kind of what my supervisors see, I think what's important is that they also value these soft skills. And so they're not looking for a certain amount of contact points with players or X number of emails or whatever it may be, because I just can't show that. Like the way I communicate with players is different depending on the player and where they're from. And some it's easier on Instagram, and some it's easier by text or by phone. So there's, it's hard to track those things. But I think they see it in what our players are able to accomplish. And it's definitely a team effort too. It's not just me. It's how we work with our nutrition staff and our mental performance and education, and kind of how the players that are coming up through our system are more well-rounded.
It sounds more like it's the growth that the players have. You don't do this for them. You're teaching them, correct? So you're not a secretary. Like you are teaching them how to do these life skills, not doing it for them. Correct?
Oh no, and I make it very clear that I will help them through it, but they need to do this on their own. I think it's very important to give people the tools to success. And obviously, some people may need a little more hand-holding or a little more support the first few times. Just like a teacher working with a student, every student learns differently. You may need to try a couple different attempts or a couple different ways to reach a particular student. It's the same thing with players. But yes, being able to see their growth and to see how they adjust to life in the US or the things that they're able to do now that they weren't able to do a year ago. And
like you said, they're soft skills. So it's hard to measure exactly what you're doing. Okay,
exactly. So- and I think the most important thing is being in an organization that buys into that. If leadership doesn't value soft skills, then you're not going to be successful in a role like this. But because coming from the top, this is something that's important to our organization, it gives my role even more importance and purpose.
How did you know that they valued it? I mean, I know they had the job description, but from my experience and listening to my clients' experiences, that doesn't always mean that everybody in the organization is bought into that role. So how did you know that the organization was all in?
It started right off from the interview process, and it was a very thorough interview process, and I met a lot of people from the organization. What stuck out the most to me is, as much as I felt like they were interviewing me, I felt like they were also allowing me to interview them. So it wasn't just, hey, do we think you're a good fit here, but do you think that you're a good fit? Do you think this role, is this matching your expectations as well? Is this something that you feel like you want to do and in this organization? And to me, that was the first time I really felt like, oh wait, I have say in this. This is not just about, do they want to hire me, but do I want to be here? And I think having that from the get-go was really, really important. It really helped me. Also, kind of once I started, I'd already met so many people in the organization through my interview process. So not all of it was face-to-face, so I might not have seen them before, but I at least talked to them and knew their role. And so coming into the organization, I already had a little bit of familiarity.
I have been saying that, and I know a lot of people say it, but I've been preaching this forever. It is two-sided. The interview process is two-sided. I don't care what your level is. It's really important to be very picky about who you choose to work for. So I didn't always think that in my career. I had to learn that along the way. So talk to us about when you realized, okay, it's a two-sided thing. Did you always think that? Were you interviewing me back in the day when we first started? Or is this something you acquired along the way?
No, I think in this most recent job, that's where I really realized it. It was in the way they asked the questions. It was what do you think about this? And not just, what do you think about player development, but, here's the role. What do you think about the role? Are these things that you want to do? And so really making sure that I understood what I was getting into. And even, when they offered me the job, I remember calling my mom and being like, I think I got the job offer, but the way they described it was hey, I'm going to send you some terms. Let us know what you think about them. And I was like, wait, I think this is a job offer. I just need to confirm.
That's really funny. Okay. So, right. Here are your terms. So yeah, it was a job offer, but it was you had to accept it.
Right, but it wasn't like, so we're going to send you an offer letter and whatever. It was
strange.
Yeah, it was here, take a look at this. Let us know what you think.
Wow, they were very collaborative all the way up until the offer moment.
Yeah, and collaboration is a big part of what we do.
Oh, I love that. That's good. So you're happy with the organization that you're working in. That's great. You know that they value the work that you do. I have to imagine, and I ask everyone this question, it's so common to have self-doubt, right? Or imposter syndrome. So talk to us about, do you get that? Are you the exception to the rule? Do you deal with
I am not the exception to the rule.
Do you deal with it? And how do you manage it?
So the first time that I really experienced it and knew what it was and was able to identify it was when I was transitioning and leaving one team and going to another. And there was this 4-month period where I wasn't working. Like I left my job. I didn't, it was on my own terms. And I remember, being interviewed for things or just reaching out for opportunities and being like, wait, people are considering me for this role? Like they think I can handle this? And I think where I had been before, the culture was just not great. And I think this is common in sports where there's this attitude that you should be so grateful to work here. And if you don't want to do this, somebody else will do it cheaper. Your people are a dime a dozen kind of thing. And I think that really beats you down. And I think it's a really unfortunate part of our industry. And so coming out of it and sharing my experiences with people, and they were like, wow, we can't believe you did all that. And I was like, who, me? And just me thinking like, hey, this is kind of normal life. This is not really understanding kind of the depths of what I had done and my experience and how that other people saw that outside of my prior organization, I think was really eye-opening. And so I think, it sounds kind of like, I don't want to say humble bragging, but like having people react that way to my resume and to my experience was like, oh, wait, I have done a lot. And it really makes you reflect on what you've done. And you kind of need to separate how you felt in those moments, when you felt beat down, and when you need to separate that from the actual what you have done and the factual, like, this is what happened. Feelings are hard, and, we can't always turn that part of our brain off. And so sometimes you need to just really step away from it and be like, oh, wait, I did move to the Dominican Republic for a year without really knowing anyone. I did give my name to a random GM at a bagel shop, and you can applaud yourself for those things. So I think recognizing that and taking the time to be like, oh yeah, I did kick ass there.
Yeah, I think you said it so well, is that in the moment, whatever it is, you're thinking about how you might have felt like beat down or not as confident about it, but it was still, a win is a win, right? Like, and if you could take the emotion out of it and then just see, oh wow, I did some amazing stuff. And I think it's really funny how, I want this to come out the right way, but sometimes we don't, like, we see our own value in what other people tell us.
100%.
Right. And so it's like, we gotta work to take that back. Right. Like, cause like what I'm hearing you say, and you sound like no one can see me, but I'm nodding my head. 'Cause I'm like, yes, this used to be me. Like, you don't realize what great things you've done. And then you're relying on other people to tell you how great you are, which we just should know. Like, we're great.
Exactly.
We're really good at what we do. We're great. So own it and celebrate those wins. That was my takeaway from what you just said. Did I get that right?
Yes. And I think sometimes it's good to have sounding boards that are kind of a step removed from what you do. So a few nights ago, I was talking with my mom, and we were just going through kind of my journey and stuff. And she was like, what you did was not easy. And she didn't even realize kind of all the, she's my mom, but she didn't even realize kind of everything that went into it or what all my experiences were. And so to have that, I mean, obviously your mom is always proud of you, but to have her step back and be like, wow, I didn't realize all of that, was also kind of eye-opening. And was like, oh yeah, I guess I did do it.
Yeah, that is fantastic. And having some outside perspective is good. You said something to me that was like magic words, right? Because I hear from people all the time, they're afraid they leave sports, they're not gonna be able to get back in. You left an organization, sports organization, and were without a job for 4 months and then got back into the game in a pretty amazing role, if I do say so myself. So tell us what that was like, walking away, and like how you felt.
Yeah. So I got to a point where I was not in a good situation for me, and I didn't see a lot of growth, and there was a GM change going on, and I had been living in New York and was kind of over New York City. New York City is great. I'm glad I lived there. I'm also very glad that I left. It's very overwhelming after a while.
Yes, I understand that. I'm a Jersey girl, and I was like, nope, I can't live there. It's not for me.
Yeah, I was there for about 8 years, and
Woo.
It was time to leave. So it was kind of a combination of things, but I just really felt it honestly affecting me physically and mentally. And I think once it starts really to affect you physically is when you're like, okay, something needs to change. And it was not necessarily an easy decision, but I remember having interviewed for another role, and something that work knew about, it was would have been a promotion. So they were fine with me interviewing for it. And just going through that process, and I was like, you know what, even if I don't get this job, I'm going to leave. Like, just kind of really feeling confident in what I brought to the table. And honestly, it was my way of speaking up for myself. And I'm competitive. I don't want to be a quitter. And I think for me, that was the hardest part, was getting over the fact that leaving my job was not quitting. Leaving my job was speaking up for myself. That was the biggest hurdle that I had to get over before I was okay with leaving. Once I kind of made that decision, I was like, okay, let's think about next steps. And baseball is very cyclical. So I knew that the winter meetings were coming up. I knew I would have opportunities to network. And then I figured, hey, look, if I don't get a job for the 2019 season, I'll travel and try to do some service work and just do some of the things that I hadn't gotten to do in my career ever, like actually have a summer. Mm-hmm. And was actually excited about some of that when the job opportunity came around. So it was a win-win. But I think the two biggest things for me were getting over that hurdle of leaving is not quitting on yourself, leaving is speaking up for yourself, and then being okay with not having a job and having a plan, even if it wasn't employment. And I know that not everyone financially can do that. And I was fortunate to be in that situation. But I also felt like because I'm in this situation, that makes it a little more comfortable to leave and to fight for yourself and do what you need to do for you.
I want to ask a side question first about the winter meetings. So a lot of guests have mentioned winter meetings. When I first started working in baseball, that's when I learned what they were. So for everybody who doesn't know, do you mind describing what they are and how it benefited you?
Yes. So the winter meetings are annual meetings that are held every year. The location rotates, and they're primarily for Major League Baseball clubs and officials to meet on different things. So there's player development meetings and scouting and rule changes and all sorts of things. And then also the minor leagues have their own simultaneous meeting where there's a lot of workshops and job seeking and stuff, but it's turned into this event. I don't know how else to describe it. There's 24/7 news coverage because everyone brings, or a lot of front offices bring their full staff. So there's a lot of trades that go on and different discussions. The Rule 5 draft goes on there. So it's become a really good place for networking and for job seeking. And my first winter meetings was in 2009 as a job seeker. And it's where I ended up getting my first internship, but it's crazy, chaotic. It's the most wonderful and horrible thing all at the same time, especially depending on what you're there to do. So, if you're there with a club, it's not as bad because you have your meetings. But the biggest thing about the winter meetings that everyone needs to know is the lobby. So there's always a bar in the lobby and everyone is always at the bar late at night. And that's where the best networking happens.
Oh, no one has said that about the winter meetings. Okay, good to know. So if someone's looking for a job or networking, both really, right? Does it matter what department you want to work in?
The primary roles that are at the winter meetings from a club perspective are generally the baseball ops and PR roles. Sometimes there's people from marketing and stuff that are there for other related events, but for the most part, it's specific to the baseball side of things or PR media relations side.
Okay. So, but what if I'm okay, I want to get into marketing. I live close to, or it's an easy plane ride to the winter meetings. What if I just go and just meet people and maybe they'll introduce me to somebody?
If that's your jam, I think if you can afford to do it, then it's fine. And I think that at the minor league level, there's a ton of those opportunities. And one benefit to starting at the minor leagues is you do everything. So you might be the marketing intern, but you're going to help pull tarp and you're going to help with ticket sales and you might help with pregame events and you're going to do a little bit of everything. Maybe you'll even be the announcer. You literally will do every single thing. So if you're into marketing, that's a huge opportunity. Minor league baseball teams are crazy creative. They have a lot more leeway than major league teams do. Yeah. The caveat being, I don't know what's happening with minor league baseball right now. There's a big transition.
Right.
So this might be moot in a year, next year's winter meetings. I would say twofold. It's always good to put yourself out there, but you're not going to go to the GM of a team and ask for a marketing job. So if you are into marketing and that's something that you're going to do, I think it's a good place to be and look around, but make sure you're going to the right events and you're not trying to track down the scouting director.
Right. You got to be really, really strategic is what I'm hearing you say. And
yes.
From what I gather from you and everybody else who says go there if you're a job seeker is that there's no formality to the job seeking part.
Nope.
It's not a job fair.
So the minor league side does have a job fair, but if you're interested in working on the major league side, no, there's no job fair. You will see a lot of people running around, by people I mean young white men running around in suits with their binders and their resumes. They're very easy to spot.
Oh, that's where everybody goes. Okay. Maybe I need to do a group trip for the next winter meetings. Hopefully COVID.
I know this year it's digital, but For next year.
Next year. So we're recording this in November, right before Thanksgiving, but this episode's going to air in January. So it'll be this year. If anyone's interested, I will put the link to the winter meetings or whatever link's available right now in the show notes. So go check them out and you can scroll. And if you guys want to do a group trip, I'm totally down for it. Just let me know.
Yes, it's an experience for sure. And I think 2021 is in Disney, but I could be wrong, in Orlando.
Ooh, let's just hope that Florida gets their act together.
Yes.
COVID-wise. Okay. I had the side question. I always do this, but now going back to leaving your job, 4 months without a job, and talk to us about the support. I always talk about how important it is to surround yourself with people like you, who will pick you up, whoever your cheerleaders are. So did you have a group that was supporting you during this time?
I had, my close family and friends, and then also people that I had worked with or other kind of peers in the game that had kind of, known what I had done, had seen my career. But what was kind of lacking, which was disappointing to me, is on MLB's side, there was no support for people in the middle of their career, and more from a diversity and inclusion perspective. But they have a diversity and inclusion pipeline and fellowship program for entry-level stuff, and they support, on the executive level, helping find more diverse candidates. But there was nothing in the middle there. And not that I didn't feel like I needed a handout, but I felt like I wanted that validation that I still, that people wanted me to stay in the game. And it wasn't just me being like, I'm going to stay in baseball because this is what I've always done. And I just thought that was a really, really crucial part that was missing in the game. And I look at some of the role models that I followed when I got into baseball, like a Kim Ng and Gene Afterman and Raquel Ferreira. And I'm like, why have I been following the same women for 10, 15 years? Mm-hmm. Why are there no other women? So between that and not feeling kind of any support, again, like not looking for a handout, but just looking for, I don't even know what the right word is, but just that confirmation that like, hey, what you've done is valuable. We understand you're transitioning in your career, but like, let's see what opportunities there are or whatever. And having people that said like, yes, we need you to stay in the game, I felt was really lacking. And so I just started reaching out to other women that I knew in the game. And I was like, hey guys, like this is missing. We really need to do something to kind of keep it all together. And it eventually evolved into a text chain and a WhatsApp group. And now there's about over 80 of us that all stay connected. And I think a lot of us were at that point where we're like, okay, we've established who we are and what we do. How are we going to get to that next step? And how can we help each other? And I think also with that came the realization that there's no quota for the number of women in the game. The more there are of us, the more teams are going to feel comfortable hiring women. Not that it should matter, but it does matter in a male-dominated industry. And what can we do to support each other to keep good women in the game and not feel like that we're not wanted?
Wow. Okay. So there's a lack and you saw that. There's this void and you saw it, and then you decided, well, there's nothing that exists. I can't articulate perfectly what I want, but I know what it is when I have it. So I'm just going to create it.
Yeah, I think part of it was that I wasn't working anywhere at the time when I started thinking about it. So I was like, well, I might as well use this time for something productive.
Okay. And so now it's grown to 80 women. And what type of women are in this group? Tell us a little about it. And I know, and I'll link in the show notes as well, there's a really cool article in the New York Times about it. So tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so we have women from all different aspects of baseball ops. So athletic trainers, strength coaches, on-field coaches, administration, scouting, player development, international baseball ops, like covers the whole gamut. And what's really cool to me is that, if you think about, there's 80 something women in the group and 30 clubs. So as a GM, you might only be seeing 2 or 3 women at your club on the baseball side. And so you may have an administrator and an athletic trainer, and you never thought about hiring a female strength and conditioning coach because it just never crossed your mind. Well, I've got 5 that work for different clubs that I can show you and that are kicking ass at their job and whatnot. And so I think that, it helps not just us support each other, but it gives us a voice and it gives us some visibility and to let people know like, hey, we're here. There's a lot of different things that we can do. And, maybe it's time to pay attention to us.
That's fantastic. First of all, congratulations on creating that.
Thank you.
And I'm sure all the women in the group really just enjoy having each other. Like, it's like the best group text like ever, right? Like if you guys all are working on the baseball operations side, which is rare. And like you all get to support each other and pick each other up and congratulate each other on wins. And it's just so nice to have. So
it really is.
awesome.
And I think the biggest thing too is it's not just a place for us to sit, and the congratulating is awesome and supporting each other is awesome, but it's not a place where we sit and we vent about what's going on. Like there's definitely some space for that, but we want to be productive with it. So, here's the problem. Well, what can we do about it? And what has worked at your club, or what does your club do? And obviously not trading trade secrets or anything like that, but just almost like best practices and things like, oh, wait, you guys have a female locker room? Like we don't have a women's locker room. Maybe if other clubs knew that like these clubs had women's locker rooms, they'd put one in, kind of, just things like that, where it's like, we know now that we have this voice and this platform. So what can we do, not just to support each other, but to advocate for each other?
That is fantastic. Ooh, all right. Good stuff. Congrats again on that.
Thank you.
Okay. We are winding down. Are you ready to do the rapid fire questions?
I guess so. It's now or never.
It really is. All right. Just rattle off the first thing that comes to your mind. Ready?
Okay.
All right. Here we go. What is your favorite sports moment?
Ooh, okay. So obviously I'm a Cleveland Indians fan right now, but I grew up a Boston Red Sox fan, and I went to Game 4 of the 2004 championship series against the Yankees when Dave Roberts stole the base and the Red Sox have been down 3-0, and it is still probably one of the greatest games I've ever been to.
Yes, that's awesome. That's a good one. All right. What is something people always get wrong about you?
Strangely, how to spell my name. I feel like Jen Wolf is a pretty easy name to spell. 1 N, no E on Wolf. But I get a lot of like Jens with 2 N's or Wolfs with an E.
Oh my goodness. I feel your pain. Okay. What is one food that you would never give up?
Sushi. I could eat sushi every single day.
All right. Good to know. Are you a morning or a night person?
Night person. I am not a morning person.
We would not get along if we ever had to travel together. Okay. What's your favorite holiday?
Ooh, Halloween, because I like an excuse to dress up in crazy outfits.
What job would you be absolutely horrible at?
Ooh, I know this is supposed to be rapid fire.
It sure is.
Anything, like a programmer or anything where like you have to like be locked in and focused and not talk to anyone. I just want to talk to people too much, and COVID has showed me that I don't do well in isolation. I need that human contact.
Quite the opposite from me, this introvert over here. Okay, what product would you seriously stockpile if you found out they weren't going to make it anymore?
So the last thing that I did stockpile was, there's this tea that I love from this company called David's Tea that it's out of Canada, I think, but they had a coffee shop or tea shop near my old apartment in New York, and they made this mint matcha powder. And when it was going out of, they were getting rid of it, I definitely stockpiled it.
I love a real life example. Okay, what's your favorite app?
Ooh, WhatsApp, because I feel like that's just how I connect to everyone in my life.
Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram?
Instagram.
Okay. Who is your biggest inspiration in life?
I would have to say my mom and the other women that came before her. And my mom's kind of generation, like she always worked and her mom always worked and my great-grandma always worked. My great-grandma was one of the first female orthopedic surgeons in the country. Yeah. And so just knowing that I come from a line of women that have always been career women, but have also been moms. I am not at the mom stage yet, but it just has always been an inspiration to me.
Fantastic. Okay. As a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I had it all planned out. So I was going to be the president like once a week, an astronaut a couple days a week, and a singer and an actress, even though I can't sing or act. But yes, I was going to rotate between all of those.
These are fantastic. Okay. Finish this sentence. The future of women working in sports is?
Getting even better.
All right. Congratulations. You have finished the rapid fire questions. Okay. Tell us, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, how could they go about doing that?
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter. I don't tweet as much as I should, but feel free to reach out there. And we can throw my email in the show notes as well.
All right. Great. Jen, thank you so much. Jen with one N and no E at the end of your last name. This was fantastic and such a treat. Thank you.
For sure.
So what did you think of this episode? Do you know another woman who works or is aspiring to work in sports? Would you do me a favor and share this with them? It would mean so much if together we could support and inspire other women on their journey. And let's stay connected. I love meeting and talking to new people. Follow me on Instagram at Jahaan Blake and join the free Game of Her Own community by visiting jahaanblake.com. I can't wait to meet you.